Hi, friends. It's your girl, Harpo. Welcome to this episode of Brown Girl Guilt. Today, I have a very special guest. Her name is Amrita Ahuja. Amrita is an inventor and visionary. She is the force behind Groundwork. Her lifelong entrepreneurship journey has led her from design to health to marketing and beyond. And from Silicon Valley to Qatar to the coast of the Pacific Northwest, Amrita is changing the game for productivity and peace, creating a paradigm shift for how we live and work. Hi, Amrita.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm so happy you're here. I'm so excited you're here.
Thank you.
You're someone who's very important in my life. And it's really so exciting for me to be able to share you with all the other brown girls and all the other girlies and all the non-girlies as well. So I want to back up and tell people like how I know you, how I'm connected to you.
Yeah.
That's always really nice to sort of center and ground. So in 2020, I joined 5X, which is the organization that I am now a leader at. And we're an arts organization for young South Asians. And everybody who sort of joins 5X has to do, not has to do, but is invited to do something called Groundwork. And it's a framework and a system that we learn on like how to manage your life, manage your calendar, manage your email inbox. And so I did that in 2020, along with a lot of my other colleagues. And then in 2022, I was approached by Tarun, who was the previous executive director. And he basically said that he wants me to take over and be the executive director of 5X. And already at the time, like you and I had like sort of known each other, but we didn't really have a deep relationship. And I was doing the system and I was like in contact with you through various times over those 2 years about like, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I remember the one time that I actually had a check-in with you or I joined like a Groundwork practice course was when my mom had gotten sick and then I couldn't actually respond to like helping her, taking care of the house and doing my job. I was really overwhelmed at the time. But fast forward to 2022, I found myself at your place and I was like, okay, I want to like deepen my relationship with the work that I'm doing. I'm being called to step into this like new gigantic role and I just don't feel like I know how to do it. I had a lot of fear. There was a lot of uncertainty and I actually don't really remember my life before that weekend very well. But after that weekend, my entire life changed. And then you coached me every week for an hour for a year. And now we're here. And so, yeah, and that's how we know each other. So I guess what I want to do now is I want to share that process with people, what that time that we spent together that year, what we did, and then sort of where we're at now. And then I want people to learn more about Groundwork and learn more about you.
Cool. I love that.
So can you tell us what Groundwork actually is? Because you're the founder of something called Groundwork. I am coached in something called Groundwork. And then now I am an executive coach of something called Groundwork.
Yeah.
But what is Groundwork?
Yeah. So, I mean, mainly what we do is my mission is really to help people who want to perform in the world, want to get things done, want to be up to stuff. They're ambitious and they're driven and they have something at stake. Something that matters to them that they really, that's why I think we work with a lot of like leaders and artists and founders of startups, executives who are managing a lot of people and have a lot on their plate. So, the thing with high performers is that they're really good at getting things done. But because they're so good at getting things done and they're good at performing, they're often in a constant like state of stress, right? And overwhelm. And unfortunately, that means that they feel like shit as they're trying to get things done. And so my goal is really to help those people implement a set of behaviors and systems that help them achieve peace and balance in their lives while they're up to everything that they're doing.
Right.
Yeah. And so that's what Groundwork is. Groundwork is a set of behaviors and the systems that you need to manage everything on your plate and also to have peace be something that you're actually embedding yourself in a world that is so hyperactive and so chaotic. We have so much coming at us right now. The average person can't keep up to their email inbox. They can't keep up to their calendars. They can't keep up to their tasks. And then, we're going to talk about this, which is why I'm so excited to be on this particular podcast because there's a cultural component for us.
Right.
I'm half brown and we'll talk about that, but as brown women, the pressure that we have from our culture and what we've inherited is so wild.
Yeah.
And then we're expected to perform in that pain and trauma that we've inherited. And so, yeah, there's a whole other component there that we can get to. But yeah, there's just a lot going on for most people and it's hard to keep up.
Totally.
Yeah.
So let's actually zoom into like what happened when I showed up to your place and then you sort of coached me through. I had been asked to take on this brand new leadership role. I was feeling like, yeah, I could do it, but also like just experiencing a high level of fear, uncertainty, anxiousness. I was also, my attention was very split because I was doing multiple other things. I was also doing Brown Girl Guilt as an podcast. I was doing like freelance copywriting. I was doing all these different things that weren't actually going to be helpful in this new role that I was going to step into.
Right.
So when I came to your place, can you walk us through what actually happened? Like, what did we do when I was at your place and you were coaching me during this Groundwork retreat?
Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing that we did, and you'll have to maybe help jog my memory, and this is what I mean by when people are good at performing, they're often just perpetuating a constant state of stress, is that we look at what your response is to stress, right? And we look at exactly what happens to you when you're in a survival state, basically. And so in Groundwork, the first part of the framework is looking at how you survive difficult and challenging situations, what gets triggered in your experience. And then we work to mitigate that and actually become highly attuned to how do we get out of that survival state in any given moment? How do we give ourselves back the choice to actually not be in survival? And free ourselves from the shackles of overwhelm and anxiety and worry and guilt and all the things that kind of run our state of mind.
Right.
And the reason that that's the first thing that we do in Groundwork, and that's the reason that the first thing that we did together, is that if you want to perform, you have to be aware of what your internal state is, because you're going to be making decisions from that place. You're going to be scheduling things from that place. You're going to be deciding what's important from that place. And also you're going to be moving through your day from that place.
Right.
So we want that place to be one of clarity, one of focus, and ideally one of joy.
Yeah.
That would be the ultimate goal. And then, yeah, just having more resilience to deal with stress. Because there's no way around life being painful and stressful for people.
Right.
And there's no, life isn't going to be a piece of cake for almost all of us.
Yeah.
Some are going to have more extreme experiences than others, but we do have a choice about how we build resilience around those moments. And most of us aren't taught very simple tools on how to do that. And, I think we can get a little bit, I just want to touch on this because I think it's important and it's been on my mind as I've been preparing for this podcast. There's a lot of like amazing tools out there. There's, breath work and meditation and a lot of spiritual modalities that are awesome for people. And I think we really need simplicity in the tools that we build and the habits that we build for ourselves, because everything is already so fucking complicated.
Right.
Like life is already complex. And so I think one of the reasons that Groundwork has sort of begun to have a really massive following is because it's so simple and it makes so much sense and it's so easy to remember. It's not trying to be something that's going to save you.
Yeah.
It's actually just, here's the practice for staying out of survival and having that be really accessible to people.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about what you mean when you say survival? Like, what is that? You said that we can make a choice to live from a place that is not survival, which to me suggests that like we have been in survival without really a lot of awareness around it. So can you speak on what survival actually is?
Yeah. I mean, so, technically in technical language, I describe it as a state of overwhelm, anxiety, and worry. And there are different ways that plays out. And there's what I believe to be a root cause for that response. But basically, I mean, survival mode. So we talk about the basics are fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. The first three are well-known responses. I mean, probably most of us have heard of that in some form from just basic psychology. But the last one is a really interesting one. So fawning is people pleasing.
Right.
So it's actually abdicating your own needs to meet the needs of another person.
Me.
Me. A lot of brown girls.
We are
a lot of brown girls.
People pleasers.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. Write that on my grave, okay? She was a people pleaser.
Let's not. let's work with that one.
She recovered, but she was one.
Recovering people pleaser.
Recovering people pleaser.
That's it. Yeah. So that one was only revealed, I think, in the last 2 decades when they started to study women, believe it or not.
I believe it.
Right? But it's funny because even with a lot of the high-performing men that I work with, many of them have a fawn, very key, dominant fawn response.
Right.
So anyways, I always think that's interesting because we tend to put it to women, but I've seen it across the board. So yeah, fight, flight, freeze, fawn are the kind of primary survival responses, but we don't really talk about it in that way at Groundwork. We actually map it from the 5 spheres of life. So we map your pattern, your response pattern to stress from the 5 spheres of life. Those being the physical, mental, emotional, behavioral, and spiritual spheres of life. Mm-hmm. And we get very detailed about what it looks like when you're in that state.
Right.
And it kind of acts like a blueprint.
Right.
So the way you do one thing is sort of the way you do everything. So you'll see if we look at how you're reacting to a stressful situation at work and we map the pattern for how you're having that reaction, say in a difficult conflict at work, you'll often see that conflict or that pattern, will play out in a personal relationship.
Right.
And there's nuance and, it does change. But once you map the pattern in a detailed way with that much nuance and detail, it's really hard to unsee it.
Yeah.
And I think you probably had that experience, right? Like when we mapped your survival pattern, it's like, okay.
Yeah.
You see it come up in real time and you can't unsee it.
Well, and also you realize that I think you've said this a lot too with a lot of clients that you work with. It's like, well, I don't know about a time where I'm never not in survival, right? Because when you're in survival, you're really it's the way that you respond to life. Survival is how you move through the world in reaction to a stress, it's a stress response. Yeah. And if you're constantly stressed out and you're constantly reacting to life as opposed to responding to it, you will be in that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn.
Yes.
Such a tongue twister.
Yeah.
But you'll be in that, and actually so many of us have made a home in it, just constantly.
Yeah. And I mean, again, for brown women, we've inherited so much of it.
Yes.
It's just in our DNA. We actually, yeah. I mean, I think it's not true that we don't, a lot of people will say when they first map their survival pattern, wow, do I even know what it's like not to be in survival?
Yeah.
I promise you've had moments of joy. And you do know. It's just that it's probably not the dominant experience of your life. Mm-hmm. And that the window of tolerance, you're kind of outside of what's probably normal for when you go into survival and when we come out of it, dipping in and out of it, which is normal. It's part of being human.
Right.
But we've extended it so much and we're living in that constant strain and tension-based state that it's no longer effective.
Right.
And so if you want to be up to anything and you want to be effective at what you're doing, that's probably the first thing that needs dealing with.
Right. And I think, we've talked about this a lot where people either push through, they constantly push and they push and push, or they completely numb out.
Yeah.
Right. And so my relationship with that was, I'm a high achiever, high performer. Yep. And so I was constantly pushing through and just hitting goalpost to goalpost. I had a master's degree by 23. Yeah. I was never stopping to pause. I was constantly thinking about what can stimulate me next.
Yeah.
And so that was me in survival mode for a majority of my life, with moments of clarity and joy, of course.
Yes.
But the overall dominant experience for me was I was in survival. And that was what was driving, being so spread out and being so thin. And then realizing that I had now arrived at this juncture where I couldn't actually continue that behavior because I wouldn't end up being I wouldn't be successful at this next endeavor.
Right.
And that's why when I came, we mapped out my survival pattern, and you were like, can you think of a time recently where you felt bad or you didn't feel good? And I was like, yeah, like something like this happened. And now in hindsight, it was so simple. It was like the people who were making my website were like a week later than they said they were going to be. And they had just messaged me to let me know. And I had just like completely lost sight of reality, right? I was just I was just in survival mode. I think I started to fight. I was like getting angry and upset and like trying to push through. And I was like, I'll just do it on my own, and like completely losing sight of who I am as a person. So we had mapped that out. And then after we mapped it out, you sort of just like, I think you just like, I don't know what happened. I think maybe you kind of just like left me and you played a meditation for me. Right. And then you left me. And then it was like a 5-minute meditation, or it was like just like a guided audio, right? I listened to it. It was your voice. And then just sort of what came out of that for the first time in my life was like, oh, I didn't know that this is what I was actually feeling on the inside. I never paid attention to the inside of myself in that way before. Right. Can you describe what I was doing when you left me with that?
Yeah. So what you're talking about is the drop-in meditation. Yeah. Yes. That's great. You're a big fan of it. And as are most alumni, it's funny, you know, so many of the alumni, again, because a lot of them are high performers, they're very self-aware. They're deeply spiritual people. They've access to a lot of mindfulness tools. They've meditated, you know, they've gone for Vipassana, whatever, like they've done the stuff. Yeah. And somehow this 5-minute practice of doing what we call dropping in is so powerful, again, because I think of the simplicity. So dropping in is the practice of noticing the survival pattern that you're in when you're in it, and almost vetoing your right to operate from that state, because that is part of the muscle, is like going, no, I'm not going to do it from that place. Yeah. And then rather than perpetuating that reactive state of the pattern, you actually go inward and witness what's actually unfolding on the inside. Totally. Which is usually some form of pain. When I say pain, I mean mental, emotional distress. And it's usually correlate with a very core belief you have about yourself. You know, I'm not good enough. Something's wrong with me. And
I'm a bad person.
Yeah, exactly. Some form of feeling, a deep sadness or hurt and pain inside. And when we bear witness to that place, the survival pattern subsides. Because I believe that the survival pattern only exists for one reason, and one reason only, and it's to protect us from feeling pain. Yeah. And the original formation of pain usually occurs when we're very young, and it occurs before we have our capacity to process painful experiences. And so the pattern begins developing in the first instance of not being able to get the need for love met from a parental figure or from the external world. Right. And when we can't get that need met, rather than feeling that experience and letting it move through our system, it gets caught as a pain blockage. So the Buddhists talk about this as samskaras. These are energetic or physiological blockages of pain or imprints that then get triggered over and over again in a lifetime. And in order to avoid feeling that pain, we create mechanisms, which I call the survival pattern, to avoid or protect us from feeling that pain. Right. So what happens is when you drop in, when you see the pattern and you drop in and you actually bear witness to that imprint, it actually loses its grip over time. Totally. It's so wild. Like I'm still dumbfounded by this discovery. Yeah. Myself sometimes. Yeah. Like
you're like, oh, just giving it like attention for 5 minutes makes it goes away.
Yeah.
Like what?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And yet so many of us are like intellectualizing it and like trying to learn how to breathe into it. And like, you know, we see therapists and we talk about it. And these are all great modalities, and I've done them all myself, and I appreciate these tools deeply. And also 5 minutes of bearing witness to your own pain on the inside can make such a massive difference in your experience day to day.
And the reason that, you know, okay, so the reason why that is so effective is because when we initially experience that physiological and energetic pain, that blockage, it's too devastating to our child mind. Yeah. Right? It's way too devastating. We don't actually have the cognitive abilities to like make sense of it yet.
Exactly.
And so what whatever it is, you know, I don't know the technical term. Maybe it's our brain, maybe it's our body, maybe it's our nervous system, whatever it is, will try to shield us from it, protect us from it, because experiencing it to a certain degree to our child minds is detrimental. It's like devastating. Yeah. And our bodies might not know the difference between a bear is attacking me and I'm experiencing this pain, which is why it's called survival. Yeah. Because it actually feels life or death. Yes. Right? And like feeling it is so scary because we think, what if I feel this pain and it completely annihilates me? We like operate in this fear-based place where we're like, if I was to feel it, oh, I don't know, like that's too much uncertainty and I don't want to experience it.
Yes. And I will just preface that by saying, and this is a really important thing, and you know, I know, like, for example, some of the masters I really respect, like Gabor Mate, for example, very skilled and careful with how we address trauma and pain.
Totally.
And I have such a deep appreciation for that. I'm not trained in those modalities, so I always like to say, like, if it's, when you're dropping in, if it's too much, go easy. And the irony is when you're dropping into pain, like, you actually can't get there through the intellect for the same reason that you're talking about it, which is it wasn't formed in the intellect. The original formation of pain was formed in the physiology. So that's why talk therapy only gets us so far with it, because it's not intellectual, it's visceral. Right. And so that's why the practice of dropping into it and actually feeling it and experiencing it at that level of pain is really effective, because we're addressing it at the level it was formed. Right. Now, having said that, and in particular, the brown women that I've worked with, you know, and I think it needs more saying. I think we need to be way more explicit about what's going on in our communities. But like the women that are experiencing abuse in our community right now and have as children, that pain is so profound and so deep. And that's why I have so much respect for brown women, because they experience a level of pain and trauma that many, many people don't. Right. And so it's really important to be in a relationship when you're dropping into that, where you feel safe and seen. You know, that's why the coaching is really a key part of learning to drop in an effective way, because you want to be protected. Yeah, you want to feel safe when you're doing that.
Yeah. And I mean, to feel pain is inherently painful.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Right. I can describe what it's felt like for me to move through the pain when I've dropped in. I mean, it's interesting. Like now on the other side of it, I drop in readily. I'm just so...
You crave it, right?
After I crave it.
I know, I do too.
I'm like, oh my God.
When you're not in touch with it, it's weird.
I know. Because I was going to say I crave it. It's like going for a massage, right? Yes. And you're like, I know it's going to hurt when they touch that muscle, but God damn, I want them to touch that muscle. Yes. Right? And if they're like tiptoeing around it, you're like, touch the damn muscle. Yeah. Like hit the pain point. Yeah. Because I know once that happens, it'll be a release. Yes. And so I think that's the clarity that I have now, is that like feeling it, I will move through it. I was quite surprised in the beginning when I started to drop in at how often I needed to do it, but also how it was actually things that I'd never expected. So like, I sometimes will open up an email and I'm like, oh my God, it's there, it's coming. Yeah. You know, so it's like, it's not just interpersonal. Yes. Like actually everything in life is interpersonal. True. Right. But it's emails. Yeah. It's Instagram DM comments. Yeah. Or like DMs or comments. Yes. It's conversations with family members. Yes. It's the boy that doesn't like me back. Right. Right. Yes. It's all these things. And I keep having the same response again and again. Yeah. And then when I'm dropping in, I'm coming to the same conclusion again and again. Yeah. And so I love what you're saying about how your survival pattern and like the way that we map it is actually how we respond to like pretty much everything in our lives. Yeah. Right. Totally. It's across the board, because I think like what I've also noticed in a lot of work that is not groundwork is that there's this tendency to separate like work and life and like work and personal. Yeah. And it's actually, I personally think you cannot, because you are the same person moving through all of those different spheres of your life. Yeah.
And if you want to achieve, which, you know, the goal of our work is like achieving peace and balance. Yes. So you can't separate them. I mean, whatever it is, one whole life, right? And that I mean, that's a big part of where Sikhi comes in as well into the work, is very much a holistic way. It's a way of life. It's seeing, everything through one lens.
Right.
It's that oneness that permeates everything.
Can you talk to me about why it's important to go and drop in and not push through and do the thing anyway when you're in pain?
Yes. Yeah. It's because you're going to be in a resistance-based state. So when you're in the survival pattern and you're in pain, you're in a resistant state. Resistance meaning a tension-based state. It's myopic, meaning it's kind of like having blinders on. It's tunnel vision. And what happens when you're in that state is you lose your periphery. All of a sudden, you don't have access to full creativity. You don't have access to holistic thinking. You don't have access to all the potential and possibilities that exist because you're just it's all outcome-based.
Yeah.
So doing anything from that place, especially where it involves being creative and problem solving and making clear decisions, is not the most effective place to do that from. So the reason we drop in is to return ourselves to a non-resistant state, an open state, a state of clarity, a state of focus, a state of ease, so that we can actually tackle those complex things from a place that's clear.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's so much difference actually, like when you do create from that place of clarity and non-resistance versus resistance and like tension. I see like a world of a difference in even the way that I communicate.
Yeah.
So when I'm in resistance and I'm in survival or I'm in pain, I've been triggered in some sort of way. The way that I speak is so not kind. It's not authentic to who I am. It's not like, and also like nothing comes of it. Like it just creates more conflict. It creates more drama. But then when I take some time to create space before I act, when I go do a drop in, I find that when I come back and I respond, I'm like so loving. Even if like, okay, so like obviously the email hasn't changed.
Yeah.
Right. It still has the same things. The contents are the same, but now I've changed.
Yes.
And so because now I took some time, I'm responding from love and clarity. And I can actually
from your values,
my values, and I can actually see like what they're upset about, as opposed to making it mean something about myself.
Yeah, and as opposed to also getting on the dichotomy of victim blame, right?
Yeah,
which again is a big thing in our community. Like I know I was raised in that victim mentality and blaming mentality. Boy, is that not helpful?
Yeah,
I mean, first of all, it doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
Second of all, it puts you in a completely powerless and helpless place.
Right.
And so if you want to be a leader in any way in your life, you got to jump off that dichotomy.
Yeah.
You got to take responsibility for your state, for the way that you react to painful things, and actually start to address it from a different place.
Can you tell me what happens in the lives of people who go through groundwork? Not like I want to get to the system in a second, right?
Yes.
But can you tell me what happens when I start to drop in and I start to neutralize and come into a place of non-resistance? I'm a brown girl who lives in a home where other people are still very much in survival. They're not dropping in. I have literally taught my parents groundwork in Punjabi and they're still not doing it. Right? My mom and dad both have their survival pattern on their phone, and they're
and
like,
it helped when they did do it the first couple times.
Totally helped, but mom was
keeping it consistent.
Literally, mom was in survival yesterday, and I was like, let's go look, whatever. But I guess what I'm saying is like, what's the like if I'm doing this, what is happening to my environment? Yeah,
I mean, of course, certain things. You can't change certain things. Yeah. Right. Like if you're in an abusive household, getting out of your survival pattern, you actually need your survival pattern probably in that situation.
Totally
right?
true.
Yeah. So getting out of the environment where it's not conducive to your well-being obviously is something to consider. But what I will say, and what I noticed in my own experience of getting out of survival is that, and how I was taught as well to think about this idea of my response to pain, is that when I shift my pain, when I shift my own pattern and I get out of that reaction to difficulty, then actually I have a shot at the dynamic around me also shifting. The way that people respond to me in that dynamic, the way that I can hold, a different kind of energy or space for others who are impacted by me. And so that naturally begins to shift. And what I noticed is that it makes it easier for others to choose a different state. Not always the case, obviously. Like everybody has choice and we all have to make our own decisions. But the chances are far greater. Yeah.
You actually get a lot more resolve in that way. You know what I mean? Because otherwise it's just your pain with my pain and then more pain. And then, then we don't talk about it. I mean, how many of us have parents who don't talk to their siblings, or like go to the weddings but are like, fuck them. You know what I mean? Come home and talk shit. Like, it's so like prevalent in our community. But actually that starts to change when you're so right about having like control over the dynamic.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Because think about it, right? Pain to pain is going to give you a certain set of outcomes.
Yeah.
But if one person is not in pain and they're interacting with someone who is, all of a sudden you have a shot at something different.
Yeah.
You have a shot at actually changing the way that interaction takes place. And what I've noticed is when you don't meet pain with pain, that actually allows the pain of the other person to subside.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Can we talk a little bit about Amrita the brown girl?
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
The half brown girl.
Yeah. Just for clarity, I know I'm white passing.
Yes, but Amrita is half Punjabi. So can we talk about like what was your life like in survival? What was that like? What was your upbringing like? And then the reason I bring that up also is because I know you and I obviously know you're my friend. But you changing your relationship with your pain and the resistance and your survival pattern has given you a lot of control and freedom around the dynamic of your life from where you came from and then where you are now.
Yeah.
So can you share what was going on for you when you were younger? And then like how has that impact, like what the work that you're doing now, how has that changed who you are in that environment and with those people in your life?
Great question. Yeah. So, I mean, my childhood was like survival based, which is obviously what my whole goal is, to help people get out of survival. And the reason for that is I feel like I was raised in survival. I mean, so yeah, mixed heritage, mixed race kid growing up on the outskirts of Montreal. And by the time I was 18, I think I counted once that we probably moved over 20 times in 18 years. And it was just never knowing if the rent was going to be paid on time or if we were going to have to move, and getting really good. So my survival pattern formed as a result of that instability in our household. And I got really good at I'm also the eldest daughter.
Shout out.
Right? Got good at taking care of everything, being on top of everything, taking care of everyone so that I wouldn't have to feel pain.
Right.
And I got so good at it, obviously, that it makes me good at what I do. But I know the difference now between when I'm doing it from that pain-based place or when I'm doing it because I have the value for being good to others and being of service. But yeah, that survival state growing up was so painful. And watching my father, who so desperately wanted to do well in life and so desperately wanted to achieve two particular things, which I think most brown girls this will resonate. It's like all about money and social status. Yeah. And, we didn't know if the rent was going to be paid, but it was always like we had to make sure we were well dressed, right, to look a certain way. And I was lucky that my parents were very loving. It wasn't an abusive household or anything like that. Like, they were very good to us and they loved us and we had a lot of freedom to be ourselves. But this watching my dad fall into deeper and deeper depression as I got older because he couldn't achieve these two things, his pain became my pain. Yeah. And it was like, at 12 years old, I got a newspaper route to see if I could help make a bit of money. I learned to iron all his shirts, pack lunches for my brother and sister, just do everything I possibly could, to the point of pushing myself to such exhaustion that I just carried this heavy burden and this sense of guilt for watching my family suffer so much. And when I eventually got into my early 20s and late teens and kind of left my family, I carried so much guilt for leaving to try and salvage myself, you know? I just felt so guilty about leaving my family behind. And also I think my my spirit knew I had to go figure myself out in order to be of help to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I've, made a return, and I have a great relationship with my parents, and my siblings have done groundwork, and, I think we've all inquired and looked at our stuff as well. But yeah, that pain kind of, I can drop into it right now. I can feel it as I'm talking about it. It never really leaves you. But I think the question is, how integrated are you with your pain? And is it driving your decisions, and is it driving your action? And if you want to have a choice about that, you have to kind of face it.
Yeah. That's so true. And actually, while you were saying that, I could just tap into the energy of a lot of the women who are listening, to the girls who are listening, because I think so many of us can relate to that, where like our people pleasing and our perfectionism actually comes from this place. Yeah. It's not because there's something inherently wrong with us or because we're, like self-centered or narcissistic people. That's not where it comes from. It actually comes from not being able to handle the pain of watching your loved ones going through what they're going through. Yeah. I mean, I did that a lot, where I was like, how can I be completely perfect and still so that I'm one less thing for them to worry about?
Right.
That's where mine came from.
That was your, yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Mine came from that place.
Yeah, that's a good
where
one.
It's like, so how can I just become so invisible that the things that they're dealing with are the things that they deal with, and then I'm not a nuisance. I'm not a problem. Yeah. How do you do that at like age 5, 6, 7? Like, where does that come from? Yeah. Right? It just happens. But then that becomes our dominant way of moving through the world, because that's all we know.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. And then you just start to become really responsible for people. But I think one thing that I've learned through my journey with Groundwork is that it can either be, yes, you said, like this like victim place, or it can be like your superpower.
Yes.
And when you can be in touch and integrated with that pain, you can lean into that superpower a lot more.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And you can actually be of service to people and yourself in a very loving way. Yeah. As opposed to doing it from a place of like constant, what's the word? Like, I see a lot of women like my mom and a lot of other women, where we do it for love, and we do it for attention and care, and we do it to feel good about ourselves.
Yes. But meanwhile, we're suffering.
Yeah. But I think also in my experience, what it's done is it's alienated me more and more, because I don't have the belief that I'm inherently valuable. Right. I feel like I have to do something to get love. Totally. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I constantly have to produce.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And this is where that high achieving.
Yes, exactly.
Right? I have to get the degree. I have to get the second degree. I have to get a good job. Yeah. I have to be able to pay for my car. Yeah. Like, can I just breathe and be myself for a second?
Yeah. Yeah. And then take on like all the cultural expectations, right? Like, not only do you have to like get educated and have a good career, but you also have to like find a man by the age of 25 and get married, and then also have kids as quickly as possible, and also buy a house. Make sure you're driving a nice car and like look good as well. Don't get fat, and like, holy
and
mother.
own at least one Louis Vuitton. Right. At least.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
My Dior
and go
earrings.
to every wedding during wedding season and like look smashing, and like,
and please my in-laws.
And please the in-laws. How can we forget about that?
Please my in-laws, and like be like everything to everybody. I think a lot of this is also, it comes from us not being comfortable with uncertainty.
Yes.
So I want to ask you two things, because you and I talk about this. Like, sometimes we'll call each other randomly on like a Saturday night and we'll FaceTime for hours. So there's two things, and maybe they're related and maybe they're not, but they're coming up together at the same time for me. One is this like relationship with uncertainty.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, which is, I've heard you say that our community really like has lost its connection with imagination. Can you speak to those? I don't know if they're connected, but can you speak to both of those?
Yeah, so that's a tip to like a really good friend of mine who speaks to that a lot. But so let me see if they're connected, but let's talk about the uncertainty piece, because that's directly correlate with the survival pattern. I think as I started developing the survival pattern work and realizing that even though I had this like embedded from, being raised, obviously, sick, I had this embedded understanding that life is uncertain, things are unknown to us. And yet our relationship to ambiguity and uncertainty is so not, what's the word? Like it's just not.
Yeah, we just don't have one.
We just don't have it. And when we're in the survival pattern, the survival pattern will have you try and seek certainty at all costs. At all costs, right? Like you want the relationship just so that you can have the certainty that you're going to be okay and be married.
Yeah. Yeah. Even if you don't even like them.
Even if you don't even like them. Exactly. Right. And so developing this capacity to obviously not operate from survival mode and be okay with not knowing how things are going to unfold, be okay with not knowing the outcome of certain things. And not just being okay with it. And this is, again, where Sikhi comes in for me. It's like, it's actually about having a reverence for it.
Right.
And having such a deep spirituality around it and being able to be open-ended about things. And maybe that's where the imagination piece comes in, is because our community is so much in survival, we're not even open to different possibilities and ways of being and shaping our culture right now. We're stuck in old ways of being.
Right.
And it's not serving anyone.
No, it's really not.
It's really not. And so many people are suffering. And unfortunately, it's going to be left to your generation, my generation, the generations that are going to come after us to sort this out. But like kind of like, it's going to take a lot, right? Because our parents are like they're starting to shift. I don't know if you know, when I talk to my dad, it's like, he'll see the thing I'm saying, but then like very quickly, it's like a rubber band, right? It's like very quickly, it just goes back to like the old mentality. And I'm like, I know he saw it for a second, that there's a different possibility.
Yeah.
But
you and I are reading Joe Dispenza, the both of us.
I haven't started yet.
Oh, you haven't started yet?
No, I haven't started yet.
Well, there's just a lot about like, our subconscious mind.
Right.
And how we try to make change from our conscious mind.
Right.
Which is only 5% of our mind.
Right.
95% of our brains are actually subconscious.
Yes.
And so a lot of our habits and the ways that we move through the world, so survival pattern, actually lives in the subconscious. And so after the age of 35, it becomes very difficult to change.
it, right.
Very, very difficult.
So let's start getting to the younger generation.
Yes, the younger now. Start changing.
We're the 20-year-olds. I'm coaching a lot of these kids, like,
and
it's so amazing to me, like some of these brown girls in their 20s, like, wow, they're so fucking smart.
Yeah.
And so self-aware, and they know shit's not working.
Yeah.
And they know what they inherited is awful.
Yeah.
And they want to do shit. They want to do shit. They want to get stuff done. They want to achieve big things. They have big goals in mind. And it's so exciting to me. And also, and this is maybe where we start talking about the system.
Yes.
Because if you want to be up to shit in this world, you got to have your shit together.
Yeah.
You just have to. It's not enough anymore to just have a vision and a dream.
Yeah. And a vision board.
Right. A vision board. Yeah. Great. It's
and
awesome.
your 369 manifest list shit, which I absolutely hate.
Right.
Send me a DM and I'll tell you why. But anyway.
Yeah. I mean, it's fun. Maybe you get a bit of a dopamine hit from doing that stuff, right? Like maybe it feels good for about a second and you're like, oh, I did the vision board. And, it gives you some relief maybe from the pain that you're feeling and the kind of the hopes that you have and the dreams that you have. But I tell you, man, we got to get our shit together.
Yeah. So let's talk about the system because, okay, let's go back to the weekend. I'm at your place.
Yes.
I've done the drop-in now.
Yeah.
And then, we just chill, we hang out. And then the next day you teach me the Groundwork system.
Yeah.
So what is the Groundwork system? I technically already learned it at that time, but I was not following it because it was like, it's a practice, right?
Yeah.
But tell me, what is the system?
The system is a very simple way to manage your inbox, your calendar, your schedule, and everything that you have to do.
Right.
Which is primarily the basic tools you're going to need for accomplishing pretty much anything in life.
Totally.
Yeah. And it's basically a way to think about everything that you have on your plate and how to prioritize it in a way that's conscious, not unconscious, and it's connected to what matters to you.
Yep.
Because otherwise, if you're not connected to what matters to you, then you're just left to reacting to whatever's showing up.
Yeah.
Like squirrel brain, right? I've seen so many kids like that now. It's like that over there and this over there, and especially with the ADHD stuff. It's like everything everywhere, and they can't stay focused.
Yeah.
They don't have structure. Yeah. We need structure.
Yeah.
Especially in this hyper intense world.
Right.
Like structure is essential for getting shit done. And so that's why the Groundwork system is a structure and a mindset for dealing with everything that's coming at you, being able to capture that, and then being able to make clear decisions about what you're doing with all of that stuff.
Yeah.
That includes emails, the relationships you manage, the things you have to do, from everything from the menial shit, like I got to pick up more toilet paper, to I have this grand vision for this new podcast I want to start.
Yeah.
Or I really, want my acting career to launch.
Yeah.
Or I want to go back and do my master's.
Yeah.
Like just capturing all that stuff. And then being able to process it in an organized way that doesn't have you just thrashing in life. It has you actually stay clear, stay focused on the task at hand. And also the amazing thing about it, and I think this is the most important for me, is that when you have a system and a structure for taking care of all that shit that comes at you, now all of a sudden there's room for creativity.
Yeah. Oh
you can think about amazing things.
Yeah.
And so creativity arises naturally, but you can actually hear it now. And also the big one for me, and this comes from my very brown upbringing, was being able to keep the promises I was making to myself, but also to others.
Yeah.
Because I had no relationship. It was like, I had no relationship to what promises meant.
Yeah.
Or what it meant to give my word to anything. It was just like, sure, I'll do that. Yes, I'll do that. It's all excitement. And it's all like,
Yeah.
And then I grew up and realized that that's not a mature way to be. It's not a good way to be in business. It's not a good way to be in life.
Yeah.
And I wanted to have power with, if I say something and I want to get something done, I can actually do that.
Yeah. I can be accountable to it.
I can be accountable to it. And I can trust myself that I can get that thing done.
Totally.
And a lot of us don't have the tools for that right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we don't even have the time because we're so disconnected from reality.
Yeah.
And that's what the system does actually for me, is like, it just snaps me back into reality.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I actually don't have time for that because I'm so intimately aware of my calendar, my priorities, and my long list of things that I need to get done.
Yeah.
And so I'm able to prioritize and be just so intimately connected to my reality, because when you're not connected to reality is when you're starting to do things like overcommitting, over structuring, over strategizing.
Yeah.
Like that's when the over starts to happen.
Yeah.
When
Or you numb out to it.
Yeah.
You avoid it completely.
Yeah. Or you're like, your inbox is now at like 1 million.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
You know what I
You're
mean?
like, ignore.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And then like you get overwhelmed, right? Like
exactly.
I felt so overwhelmed at times when someone asks me to do just even the smallest of things.
Yeah.
Right. Mom will be like, can you do this? And I'm like, I can't.
Right.
And then I just start to have a meltdown.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what the system, actually, the creativity piece is also very important to me, because when you're grounded in reality, you're in touch with your capacity of what you can and can't do.
Yeah.
Or what you're available for.
Exactly. Yeah. And then you can actually act on great ideas.
Yes.
Because you have the bandwidth and the structure to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if you're listening to this and you have, like you have a system, I mean, a lot of people are like, I have a system.
Yeah.
You might, you might have a system, but if your system is not working, this is the right system
for
you.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. This is the system for you.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about why coaching and why being coached one-on-one is a really effective way to make meaningful change in your life?
Yeah. I think building the muscle of being accountable to oneself is a difficult muscle for any of us to build. And it's so much more helpful when we have someone who's in our corner and who's acting as a partner. We have the online course, but even with the online course now, I made a decision. I was like, no, anyone who does the online course should at least just get one session. So we are offering complimentary one session now for anyone who does the online course for that reason, because it's like, when someone else can reflect back to you and help you refine the system, help you refine your survival pattern, it's just so powerful. But yeah, the main thing I would say is the self-accountability piece. Being accountable to someone else is so much easier. We know that from just looking at the calendar. Most of us, our calendars are full of meetings with other people, and we tend to show up for those things. But do you actually show up for the time that you put in the calendar to go to the gym? Do you actually, honor the time that you said you were going to go for a walk or stop for lunch?
Yeah. No, so many of us are not eating lunch during the day.
Totally.
We just power through.
Yeah. I coach so many like startup founders and founders of like beauty brands and this and that. It's like stopping to eat believe it or not, actually takes the coach going, no, I don't see the space for that in the calendar.
Yeah.
Where is that?
Yeah.
And like stopping you in your tracks and holding you to what is going to make you more effective and what's going to help you achieve the thing that we're going for, which is peace, peace of mind, and balance, so that you can actually improve your performance.
Right.
We're not just helping people achieve balance and peace. We're actually wanting them to increase their performance.
Yeah.
And we see that. The performance gets increased.
Mm-hmm.
And that might sound totally wild to someone who's already performing at a high level. But I promise you, when you have a simple structure and you're in touch with your pattern and you know where you're coming from when you're doing things, it's unbelievable how game changer it is for people.
And also the reason coaching is really effective is because we've already said this, survival pattern. Yeah. So when you're in survival, it's very myopic.
Yeah.
You actually lose sight. You're not as connected to reality. And so when you have a coach that can be like, okay, I mean, quite often, like I would be on a call with you and I'd just start and I would just blabber on and you'd be like, let's drop in. Yeah. And like, that was it. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, I could have done that. Yeah. But I needed someone to catch me and be like, okay, like you're falling, you're spiraling. Let's stop it right here.
Yeah. The other thing too is with the groundwork coaches in particular is that a big part of our training and the way that I'm training the coaches is to actually stay consistently in a state of clarity. Mm-hmm. And when you're a clear thinker and you're coaching others, and that's the place that you're coming from, and you just see things. Yeah. You see things that the other person can't see. And we all have our blind spots. There's no way around that. So having someone who's a clear thinker in your corner and who's partnering with you in life and who knows you intimately, not just from the place of how you survive difficult situations and how you react, but also what your calendar looks like, what matters to you in terms of your tasks, what your priorities are, where your conflicts are in your life, where the barriers are to your peace of mind is actually what a good coach does. Yeah. They help you identify the barriers and the cracks to your peace of mind, and then we chip away. Right. And we start to reestablish that place of peace and that place of well-being so that you can do everything that you want to get done.
Right. Totally. Yeah. Okay. Well, can you tell us a little bit more about how people can experience groundwork? What are all the different ways?
Yeah. So there's 3 main ways. One, we have the online course, which was designed to be easily digestible, to get the principles of the system and the survival pattern work into your life. They're very short video modules, about an hour and a half. So doing that and then taking us up on and opting into a free complimentary coaching session to refine your learning is part of that. So that's all accessible on the website, which is groundwork.xyz. And then the most effective way to do the work is going to be coaching. Right. We coach in 12 session increments. But I will say that most people won't give up their coach after.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't.
Lots of people don't. They'll come back 2 weeks later, a month later, especially if they're facing a challenge. Most people will just stay with me. Yeah. And they just know that having me be able to think through strategy with them or work through difficult and complex things that come up is just makes them more effective. Yeah. So committing to 3 months of coaching with a groundwork coach is going to be the most effective way to implement the principles into your life in every way and into the whole of your life, both personal and professional. And then we train teams. So we go in and we work with teams. And the reason it's so effective with teams is that it's a shared language. Right. Now you have, and you know this at 5X. Yeah. When anyone comes on and onboards into 5X, they automatically go through the groundwork system. And all of a sudden you're speaking the same language. You're like, wait a second.
Like, have you done your weekly review yet?
Exactly.
Like,
or send me the calendar invite for that. And what are the outcomes of that meeting? Yeah. Like being really clear about how you work. Yeah. Like so many founders who are quickly growing and onboarding people as they grow, if they don't have that established, it's just chaos. Yeah. It's so unfortunate. Yeah. So talk about wanting to be effective. So having that shared language in a team setting is another way. So we go in and we do 2 half-day trainings or a full-day training. And then we have implementation programs where we help people actually, because again, the accountability piece is needed in most work environments. So we implement with teams as well. Nice. And then retreats throughout the year. We do team retreats for folks who really want to immerse themselves fully and do it in a depthful way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm actually now a trained
Yes, you
executive
are.
coach in Groundwork. And it's because it truly did change my life. And it is the way that I move through the world now.
Yes. You're an embodiment of it.
I'm an embodiment of it,
Yeah,
you know,
are.
right? Like we could use the word ambassador, we can use the word coach, but like embodiment is the right word.
Yeah.
And it's because I literally do not operate in survival nearly as much as I used to before.
Yeah.
I have moments of it all the time. I was literally in survival yesterday and the day before.
Right.
But like I have so much acceptance for it now and understanding of it and awareness of it.
Yeah.
And it's truly revolutionized my life. And I can tell you some examples of how it's made me an even more effective communicator.
Yeah.
I'm stronger at setting boundaries.
Yeah.
I've been able to let go of relationships that don't serve me with more ease.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the relationships in my life were reinforcing survival and were created from a place of survival. So I had a lot more clarity, understanding, and reverence for the uncertainty that would inevitably arise when I let go of these relationships.
Yeah.
I'm just a more open, heart-centric leader. Like I meet people with so much more grace and understanding.
So beautiful.
And I would say, a better relationship and outlook with life.
Yeah.
I have more joy. I have more clarity.
Yeah.
I'm far more creative. My capacity to do things is greater.
Yeah.
I'm not unhappy anymore.
Yeah.
I'm just not unhappy. I'm not disconnected. I don't feel lost. Yeah. I feel very grounded and very connected. Yeah. And like the word groundwork is the perfect name for this, because it's been the groundwork for everything that I've done in my life now since then.
Yeah. That's definitely the idea, is implementing it as a foundation for whatever you're doing.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not like we don't face discomfort or difficult situations. Like, you know, I was saying to one of the brown girls I was coaching yesterday, I'm like, bad things happen to good people all the fucking time. And I think what Groundwork is trying to achieve is giving us the tools and the practice for being able to return to that place of joy at any moment that we need it.
Yeah.
And it is a practice. It's not a magic pill. This is not a quick fix.
No.
But it's game changer.
Yeah.
The mindset of the system as well as game changer. And I think I was just going to say, like, could you imagine doing what you're doing without the Groundwork system?
No, absolutely not. I wouldn't have lasted. It wouldn't be aligned with the life that I have imagined for myself. It just wouldn't be aligned. I just would constantly keep bumping up into like, I'm not good enough. I just wouldn't get anywhere.
Yeah.
And I will say, you're so right. Like, it's so important to say that, like, you will not escape pain.
No.
You will not.
No.
But as your capacity to hold your pain expands, so does your capacity to hold joy.
Yes.
It's like directly proportionate. So like, if the more I tap into the pain, the more I'm able to be present with it and sit with it in stillness.
Yeah.
The more expansive I become in all other arenas of my life.
Yeah.
And so then, like, greater and greater and greater in pain as it starts to meet me in my life. And like, I will, right? I'm going to move through more pain in my life. I'm going to have to lose my parents. I'm going to have to like go through so many other experiences of pain.
Yeah.
But because I have been practicing and strengthening my muscle to be able to hold the pain, I can hold other pain with a lot more, what's the word? Like, it's not easy, but like, I can just hold it. I'm not as afraid to hold it with less fear.
Yeah.
Right.
Probably more grace too.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. No, it's a good practice to have. There's no doubt. That was reminded me of something that I was going to share, but I can't remember it now. It slipped my mind. Oh, well, I feel like we could go for hours on this.
Well, the last question I want to ask you, and you can say this in like the concisest way possible. Why is this important? Why is groundwork important? Why is doing this work important?
Just generally speaking,
you have said to me that there is something around the P word, patriarchy.
Oh yes, the P word.
Let's get to the P word.
The P word, so the white supremacy. Yeah. I mean, I think you know that so my journey started when I was building a startup, working on a startup in Silicon Valley, and looking around at all the different modalities for productivity and realizing that I didn't want to do productivity the white man way. And I didn't want to be, I wanted something that was more holistic. And so you know, I do obviously I want to produce and I want to be up to stuff. And I also don't want to lose my peace of mind and my connection to my spirituality while I'm doing that. And it matters to, especially for racialized folks, which is really who this podcast is speaking to. It is so important to take care of your well-being if you're going to produce in the world. If you're going to participate in the machinery that is capitalism, because that's the structure we're living under, and the patriarchy, you need your peace of mind is so sacred. And so groundwork to me matters because we need to take care of ourselves, and we need the systems and the structure and the mindset and the behaviors to help us achieve our dreams and our goals, but without succumbing to this like pushing to at all costs, and then numbing out and scrolling mindlessly for hours because we just can't handle it anymore. Like we have to jump out of that. Yeah. It's not serving us. And in fact, we're more impacted by it than anyone else. Yeah. Racialized people are. So it matters because of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're deserving of it.
Yes.
We are so deserving of it. We are so allowed to take care of ourselves. Yeah. Still get shit done. I mean, it sucks that we have to but we get to.
Yeah. And then I think that's the switch that happens when you feel empowered by having the right habits in your life and having the right way to go about doing things. Then it feels like it's life-giving. You're like, what? I get to do this. I get to create. I get to show up at work. I get to do emails. Like, yeah, it's wild how that changes. Yeah. But it really does. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on the
honored.
Podcast.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for letting me speak to all the brown women out there.
Yeah. I mean, I just wanted to share this with them. Like if you're listening, I wanted to share this experience with you because I needed to go through it. I needed to be able to like really immerse myself in it. And the Brown Girl Guilt podcast actually went on pause while I was going through all of this. And I think now
that was a conscious choice.
That was a conscious choice because I couldn't imagine doing all of that while I couldn't be fake with you all, right? Like I needed to go sort myself out. I need to get my shit together.
You took a pause. You put your structure in place.
Yeah.
And then you rebooted.
Yeah.
With more capacity and
came back stronger, more effective, more authentic, more like just literally like with my cup, like with way more in my cup.
Yeah.
So that's where that pause came from. And so if you are interested in learning a little bit more about groundwork, and I know there's going to be some people who have been like, you might be feeling really seen right now. You know, you might be like, okay, like this is amazing. I want to do this. Like still like go explore. Don't survival pattern this, right? Don't be like, okay, this is going to solve my problems. Like don't think that way.
Make a conscious choice.
Yes. Conscious choice. Arrive at this from a place of like, this feels right and good to me.
Yeah.
And this is not us trying to sell you anything, but this is just trying to get, like we want you to see the vision of what it means to live a life that is more authentic, more grounded.
Yeah.
Groundwork.xyz, and you can follow Groundwork on Instagram as well. I'm plugging it because Amrita probably will forget to.
I'm really bad at promoting.
She's also not an Instagram girly because part of the system is also like, I don't want to be on social media. Like I don't have my notifications on. And if you have any questions about coaching, I mean, I'm also coaching. You can sign up with me, with Amrita. There's other people who are also wonderful groundwork coaches. Thanks for tuning in and thanks for being here, Amrita.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.